Hello, good morning, and what's good, you beautiful people of Atlanta's Westside. Welcome to the 35th and a very, very special edition of Westside Future Fund's virtual Transform Westside Summit. My name is Benjamin Earley.
And I'm John Ahmann, President and CEO of the Westside Future Fund. Thank you for watching this morning.
Absolutely, and we have a great show planned for you today. As I said, it's a very, very special edition of today's Transform Westside Summit. You heard our special guests last night as they were debating to become the next mayor for the city of Atlanta. We have City Council President, Ms. Felicia Moore, as well as City Councilman Andre Dickens here today as our esteemed guest. And today's panel will be moderated by none other than the Ms. Rose Scott from WABE's Closer Look. And we appreciate all our guests for coming in today, and we hope that you tune in with us and that you stick with us throughout the program to hear the answers that you need to help you decide who you want to represent you as the next mayor of the city of Atlanta.
Yeah, thank you for that. And on behalf of the Westside Future Fund, I want to thank Ms. Moore and Ms. Dickens for agreeing to come to our summit this morning. They have grueling schedules, and I so appreciate their love of our city for both of them to run for mayor. And I ran for a much smaller office, in the city of Decatur, and really appreciate how tough it is to be a candidate, all that you have to endure in a campaign. So thank you to both of them for stepping up, and thank you so much for them to be here this morning. And also thank you to Rose Scott for being our moderator this morning and helping WAB as participating as well. So thank you for that. And for those that are watching for the first time, we want to tell you a little bit about your host this morning, the Westside Future Fund. We are a not-for-profit constituted to focus on historic neighborhoods on the West Side. And I want to make sure if you're watching our program and haven't pulled off yet, you can pull up our show bulletin. And so our show bulletin goes through the agenda for this morning, and it has bios on everybody, as well as some more of the information on what's going on the West Side, as well as some all important COVID health information for those that still need to get a vaccine. So please, you can find it on our website. Is our bulletin, and also a little bit about the Westside Future Fund. What we're going to see now is the vision and mission of the Westside Future Fund, and reflecting the history of the historic West Side. Our vision is to help build a community. Dr. King would be proud to call home. Do we have our board director slide up? It's not up on the. Yeah, and here's our board of directors. We have an all-volunteer board of directors, and very, very lucky to have Dr. Beverly Tatum, the former president of Spelman College, as our board chair. And so we've got a great representative board who are all volunteers for the Westside Future Fund, and we got a great team that helps make everything happen with the Westside Future Fund. So here's our team, and we appreciate all their hard work. And then our final slide, is our team, is our Get Connected slide. And Benjamin, our Westside correspondent, because if you're watching now, we want Benjamin to tell you a little bit about how you can get more connected and help others get connected on social media. Benjamin?
Absolutely. We are on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. You can follow us, follow our channels, like, subscribe, and help us share this information. These summits are very, very vital for sharing information within the community on the West Side to update our residents and our neighbors as to the goings-on that are happening in our community. So the more people who we can spread this information to, the more people who can benefit from it. And just getting back to today's show, John, I'm a native of Atlanta, 4 generations in on the West Side, and anybody that's tuned in that's a regular viewer knows this already. But one of the reasons why we're so excited about what we're doing here today is because, as you mentioned, Westside Future Fund is really, really helping to deliver some solutions for residents of the historic West Side who are feeling the burdens and the pressure from gentrification. Right. There's a lot of development that's happening in our neighborhoods within our community, and a lot of people like me and my family and people who come from our similar backgrounds are feeling that pressure of, okay, well, we own a home, grandma owns a home, and now, this $500,000 townhome just went up down the street. Well, our property taxes are going up, and we're seeing the pressure being felt of increases in rental prices, the amount of down payment that is required to purchase a home now in Atlanta. All of that is skyrocketing, and one of the epicenters for that is right here within the historic West Side community. So if you're tuning in today, you're tuning in to get some very, very vital information from today's special guests, again, our candidates for the next mayor of the city of Atlanta, so that you can hear their plans and how they intend to engage with organizations, not just like Westside Future Fund, but so many of our partners who we work with to create a more equitable housing market and fair housing for legacy residents of the historic Westside.
No, and I appreciate your comments so much. I'm also a native Atlantan, back to Grady Bay, but I grew up on the east side, and I didn't grow up too far from the old Fourth Ward, where you know, some of what we want to prevent that happened in the old Fourth Ward happening on the west side. The good news is lots of jobs and economic vitality coming to the west side, but as you mentioned, you know, that brings consequences of escalated land prices and pushing out the very people who have been suffering in tough neighborhoods at the very time that economic opportunity is showing up to be pushed out because their housing becomes unaffordable. Right. And so that's why, you know, along with others, you know, on the west side, you know, really diving into affordable housing, really focusing on residents and seeing it and you know, and now live on the west side. And actually got runoff for both candidate and school board in my local district. I live now in Vine City, and appreciating when Dr. King's, you know, said, and you hear a lot of this from residents on the west side, is how do you build a beloved community? That's when I first came, heard a lot about from the residents of the historic west side, is we need to be thinking about honoring that legacy of a beloved community. That certainly means folks can afford to stay in their community.
Absolutely. And just proceeding with the program here, we are giving away 2 free gift cards. So if you haven't already pre-registered, you can go ahead and RSVP still to qualify to win a free gift card courtesy of Home Depot Foundation or Goodwill of North Georgia. Both of these organizations have contributed so much to the West Side revitalization effort, and we are fortunate enough that they are contributing to the Transform West Side Summit as well.
And I think also, if folks are watching right now, we have a moment to do a little call out. We are planning to be back in person. We're coming live to you from the gathering spot. One of the things we really appreciate about the Transform West Side Summits was folks who might not know each other getting to know each other. And we did that through everyone, you know, getting up at the summits and saying their name and where they were from. So if you're watching right now, we'd love for you to just quickly type in your name, maybe so we can say, you know, hello via social media. I don't know, Benjamin.
Yeah, just go ahead and drop us a comment in the comment section below the stream. You know, just give us a nice, warm Friday morning greeting. Let us know how you enjoyed the lunar eclipse last night if you caught it. You know, just give us a nice greeting. Let us know that you're here. Let us know that you're coming from wherever you're coming from and you're excited for today's program. It's a blessing to be alive, folks. It really is, especially after, you know, what the world has endured the past, you know, 20 or so months. So we appreciate you tuning in, but definitely give us a greeting. We're looking forward to hearing from you, and we're looking forward to continuing to connect with you.
And so I know next we, in kind of in spirit of the program this morning, to appreciate the candidates' time this morning, we're doing a smaller version of our devotion. We kind of moved it to an opening prayer. We typically do more of an opening devotion based on the theme of Nehemiah. But I think if you want to kind of tee up our prayer statement this morning.
Absolutely. We've got none other than the Miss Makeda Johnson, who, you know, she heads up the Six Sisters Action Team, and they do a lot of great work throughout the historic West Side as far as, you know, catering to senior citizens as well as women of color on the West Side. And you can learn more about them on their website. But she's going to be offering this morning's prayer in you know.
Opening prayer. And I say when I first started my work, she actually wrote an essay, you know, the beloved community of alternative gentrification. That was really taught me a lot, and so we're so grateful to have her here this morning, giving our opening prayer. And I know after she, I think, finishes her prayer, viewers are not going to see you and me again. They're going to see Rose Scott, who's going to move right into our candidate discussion. Right.
So if you could, we could go ahead and roll Miss Makeda Johnson's opening prayer. Thank you.
Good morning, family. It is such a pleasure to be here with you this morning and to lead the prayer at this special session where we will be looking and visiting with mayoral candidates. I'm going to pray today that God will look upon us with grace and mercy and clarity, that He will help us understand the role and responsibility of servant leadership that puts the people first. That like in the book of Nehemiah, we will rebuild Atlanta stronger than it ever was. That we will embrace the beloved community, which is the inclusive kingdom of God. Father, I'm asking that you will order the steps of the men and women and young people of the city of Atlanta and encourage them to participate in the political process. We pray that you will anoint whomever is elected for mayor to do your work and be about your business of guiding and providing direction and service for our beloved city. I ask all of these things in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, that he will order our steps, that he will guide our tongues and stable our mind. Amen.
And thank you. On behalf of WABE, Atlanta's choice for NPR, Atlanta's favorite NPR station, I'm Rose Scott, host of Closer Look, heard on WABE. You know, I am not a native of Atlanta, but I've been here for about 26 years, so it is my home. And like so many of you, choices that are made, whether they're from the city of Atlanta, the state of Georgia, or even in Washington, those decisions affect our quality of life. And so today I'm honored to play a small part in asking questions to perhaps one of these candidates who will be Atlanta's next mayor. So with that in mind, let's welcome the two candidates who are now in the runoff, Atlanta City Councilman Andre Dickens and Atlanta City Council President Felicia Moore. Thank you both for taking the time. I really appreciate it. How many times have I said this over the last month and a half? Many times. Good morning.
You moderated quite a few of our forums and debates.
We're going to open a little different this time because in your opening statements, I want you to reflect on some recent news that involves Atlanta, and that is that Atlanta is experiencing the worst inflation among any major U.S. city. We're looking at October prices up about 7.9% from a year ago. That's more than double the rate in San Francisco. So here's your question. As you reflect on this news, put in perspective how, in your administration, you would be able to help Atlanta residents deal with the burden of inflation that we're dealing with right now, which could continue if one of you are elected mayor of Atlanta. And Ms. Moore, we'll start with you.
So good morning, and first of all, thank you to the Westside Future Fund for allowing us this opportunity to talk with you. How I would deal with the issue of inflation as a part of what I do as mayor is first and foremost making sure that we keep up with the trends and know what needs are needed out there in our community. And because inflation, of course, is overlaid with a lot of other issues we're dealing with still hopefully coming out of a pandemic, but being in the midst of it, knowing that there are a lot of issues of food insecurity in our community. So that would mean that we need to focus on that. When prices of things go up, then that means what income, which has not grown for many of us, or any of us probably, is going down. And that requires that we have more emphasis on making sure that we are helping to meet the basic needs of our citizens. That can be assistance with rental, assistance with utilities, which we are heavy utility burdened city. And it can also mean that we are just there to assist, particularly our seniors, those who are on fixed income. Inflation hits them very hard because, they don't have any other income to expect. And we can't change the prices, but we can certainly help mitigate the solutions. I wasn't sure how long I had, so.
You're good at your opening statement.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Dickens.
Yeah, thank you to the Westside Future Fund. Of course, thank you, Rose, for always being here to moderate our panels. Yes, inflation has gone up, and it is making it difficult for people to continue to be able to provide for their families. They're finding themselves with more month than money each month, and so we have to be able to fill in the gaps and help individuals. What I see is a couple of approaches as it relates to making sure that people have food security, of course, but also some of the basic needs that individuals have, like childcare, we can be resourceful in that and helpful in the city and helping people find places, but also support our workers as well as those that are fringe workers around city government, and to make sure that they can afford daycare. And other things that are out there include, we really just have to have a GO team. And that GO team would be around Fulton County, the city, and our nonprofit communities, the United Way and others that get these resources that are supposed to disperse them out to the community rapidly. Fulton County is really responsible for health and human services, and our partnership with them has to be strengthened in a time such as this, which is why I have the support of a number of the county commissioners that represent Atlanta, and they're supporting me in this campaign, and they're also saying, let's lock arms and work together. With their resources and our resources, to be able to provide food and to provide health information and to help people navigate through this troublesome time. When we have the United Way that's getting money that comes through us from the federal government to be able to deploy for rental assistance, New York was able to get rid of 100% of their money to help people with rental assistance. Georgia is lagging behind, and so is Atlanta. I'll be sure to help people as they try to make sure they can afford their rent, which is the largest, rent or mortgage, which is the largest expense for folks. And that's just part of the first solution. And the other thing is to make sure people increase their incomes, because we have to move folks up the ladder of income, because income inequality is all about our folks not having enough income to meet the expectations of their rent, of their utilities, and of the daycare and all the other things that we have. So that's why I have my Atlanta Department of Labor plan to increase and allow people to have great paying jobs in the city of Atlanta, like I do with Tech Bridge.
Thank you, Councilman Dickens. Now, we should note, a programming note, this forum was scheduled to go to about 8:30. Councilman Dickens has informed us that he has a flight to catch. However, just in being fair, we're going to keep going with the conversation. Once Councilman Dickens does leave, we'll continue the conversation with Atlanta City Council President Felicia Moore. I believe we all agree to that, so that's fair. Let's get into the conversation, because as you all know, you talked about inflation. Steady home prices, the steady increase in home prices can be directly tied to inflation. And that's directly tied to neighborhood affordability. So as we get into this morning's conversation, I want you both to reflect on what's been done so far to preserve these neighborhoods, particularly on the west side, for legacy residents, the good and the bad. Councilman Dickens, we'll start with you.
Yeah, some of the good has been that we did start an Anti-Displacement Fund, a way to preserve legacy residents here, to fight back the increase in taxes that come with property values that increase right here in Vine City in English Avenue. We've done some things by helping and working with Westside Future Fund, as well as Invest Atlanta. There's been some projects and programs that I've been a part of where community members that have land, to be able to train them and give them information on how to build on their land to provide affordable housing and income. But there's still so much more that we have to do. We need to really fight gentrification that has development with displacement. We have to make it development without displacing people. And how do we do that? One of the ways is I've been passing out these "My house is not for sale" signs that people can put on their front door, as individuals have been knocking all over the city of Atlanta, these predatory investors have been trying to take over houses and giving people low money and then taking them and flipping them. And then, once you have this $100,000, you can't find another place to buy in the city of Atlanta. So we've been giving the Atlanta Legal Aid Society and volunteer lawyers have been helping people stay in their home by being able to fight back against these trespassers. I've also done senior rehab. We've done hundreds of houses where $30,000 was what we put into a fund to be able to fix seniors' roofs, their HVAC units, they're weatherizing their windows, and making sure they have ADA handlebars as they go around the home. This is to make sure that they're safe, warm, and dry, and they can stay in that home and not pay those back. Pay that back. It's a no interest loan, and it's basically a grant that they don't have to pay back so they can stay in place. Now, what we have to do going forward is freeze senior taxes across the city, so that as assessed values goes up, if you didn't have a transaction just because your neighbor did, shouldn't make your taxes go up. So freezing that with a small cost of living increase to take care of the salaries increases of the employees across the multiple years, but it will be a freeze on seniors' taxes as assessed values should not go up just because others are moving into the community. That'll keep our legacy residents here so they don't have to pay too much in taxes.
Thank you, Councilman Dickens. And we should note that candidates will have about 2 minutes to answer the question. So far, you're doing pretty good. President Moore, preserving the legacy residents.
Right. So the good things that we have done is, first and foremost, is recognizing we have an issue. And I believe across the city, people recognize that we have an issue. I tell people that what's going on is in the market. And the market is likened to the weather. You know, you can't stop the rain, but we can do things to sort of mitigate it. And I believe the Westside Future Fund is one of those examples on how we have been very intentional and working along with the fund in the city to try to mitigate what we see is happening in the Vine City, English Avenue area in the west side of Atlanta, to know that there's a lot of change going on and how can we help the residents. The Anti-Displacement Fund was, I believe, a game changer and something that we perhaps need to replicate across the city. Most of what happens with the property values, of course, are related to sales. So you can be at your home and doing everything great, and someone comes in and increases the value of that property down the street, and it changes the whole nature of the street. But we do have, and it's very few, but we do have neighborhoods where there is still some affordability. And what I want to do as mayor that we can get right that we haven't done is first do a quick assessment. We did one maybe about 10 years ago of all the neighborhoods and assess where they are on the spectrum. I'd like to rank them sort of from A to F. So anything that's below average, a D or F, we know that's where resources are needed. And that's where we will focus our attention to make sure that those neighborhoods that are affordable, we can extend the life cycle of those particular neighborhoods by bringing in resources to help people keep their homes up, to make sure that we have the infrastructure there, the street lights, the sidewalks, the roads, to help make the quality of life better in the neighborhoods. Because what I know, and I have a background, I'm an associate real estate broker, don't do much practicing of that because I'm so busy serving the city, but what I know is that each neighborhood has life cycles, and whatever we can do to increase the life cycle of those neighborhoods is really what we need to do. And we can do that by, again, being very intentional about it, looking at the property tax values. I've already mentioned that I want to do a legacy homeowner either property tax assessment freeze, which would be great, but we'd have to get our other jurisdictions to agree. And if not, we can look at our part, the city's part of your tax bill, and see if we can increase exemption for our homeowners to try to lessen that burden. And then we also got to make sure we look at utilities, because that's a burden as well, whether you're in a home or whether you're renting a home. But I believe stabilizing and preserving the affordability where we have it now is something that we really haven't focused on, and we should focus on, as well as looking at the property tax and utility burden that our residents have to help keep them in the home, particularly with inflation.
Thank you, President Moore. There are a lot of nonprofits, public-private partnerships that are all working to address housing affordability. But let's begin with the beginning. For most people, it begins with financing. There are a lot of down payment assistance programs. And this question actually comes from a listener who wants to know, can the city be more helpful in helping folks with down payment assistance? Or are you looking to partner more with organizations like Westside Future Fund to make that a reality for many households? We'll continue with you, President Moore.
So most definitely, and we cannot do all of this alone. And I am so proud to get the endorsement of NACA, which does help with financing. It helps people to get their credit together. It helps them to be able to provide. So they're a national organization that are doing great things. As a matter of fact, I was with a rally with them just recently at the State House about the rental assistance program from the Department of Community Affairs that isn't serving people. And so they're on the ground, they're advocating as well as providing assistance. Westside Future Fund, and there are many other organizations that have helped, frankly, the city to develop our One Atlanta housing plan. What now we need to do is to take those good ideas and take those resources and put them to work. Using our city-owned property, that can be a starting point. I would love to do quickly, when I'm elected, in the first 100 days, an RFQ, a request for qualifications, and see who is qualified out there to help us do affordable products, whether it be a national organization or a local organization or individuals, and then be able to see where we want to start building our affordable housing in the city. Of course, our housing authority property, I want to make sure that we get that board reset and revitalized and get to work to providing housing. And one thing we don't talk about a lot is we have a lot of property in our land bank authority, and that's opportunities where for an organization like NACA or others who provide financing or help people get the financing they need to be able to rehab homes or build infill lots, which many of the properties are. So there are many opportunities that we can do that, and partnering with nonprofit organizations is something I will be looking towards. We need, like I say, many hands make light work, and we need all hands on deck so that we can make this load of making affordable housing possible in the city.
Thank you, President Moore. Councilman Dickens, down payment assistance programs?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a part of what I've been working on for quite a while. The difference is I've been called the affordable housing champ by Atlanta Magazine. I sat in this very room for many months working with House ATL to come up with the 23 recommendations of how we go about doing more affordable housing for rental and for purchase. This is an important designation in that I'm going to build or preserve 20,000 units of affordable housing over the next 8 years. That, of course, is going to require Atlanta Housing Authority properties where we have 800 acres of vacant land, talking about Bankhead, Bowen Homes, Hollywood Court, Herndon Homes, Inglewood, North Avenue. There's so much vacant land, as well as around our MARTA stations. We have the ability to do transit-oriented development where we can go dense, we can get rid of those large parking lots and do parking decks, and really have people there in apartments, condos, townhomes, around AHA properties, and at the MARTA stations. This is important because what we will have at those places when we do the for sale units, the townhomes and the condos, we will have down payment assistance. I've been on the board of Invest Atlanta and helped to boost up the down payment assistance program that we have to be able to allow it to go lower in AMI, area median income, so more people can afford a home. I'm also interested in Habitat for Humanity as they have more diverse housing stock now and design, and also they do home repair. So one thing that we also did, this is a unique piece of opportunity. We created the 203K program where right here in Vine City, English Avenue, and the West Side, you can buy a home and have your renovation in the same loan. That's a game changer, so that you can buy a home that needs a lot of repairs but won't have to put $50,000 of your own cash that you may not have in it, but you can get that all in one mortgage. This was important work that I was a part of, and we will carry that forward when I'm mayor. We're talking about things that we've done already, but how to also expand it, and that's the difference. That's where I'm trying to take this mayorship, to show that we're going to move forward in producing more affordable housing and to be able to have a lot more people be able to go into home ownerships so that they can then have a piece of the American dream.
Thank you. This next question actually comes from a resident who was a renter. He says his landlord had property. The taxes were about $300 or $400. The next year, the Beltline was open near this residence. The property tax was $1,900. So the landlord had to pass on that to the tenant. I asked him, what'd you do? He said, I had to move. His question is there a way for the city and county to work together for these property taxes? We'll start with you, Mr. Dickens.
Yeah, absolutely. The Beltline has provided a lot of economic opportunity and a great place for people to congregate and go and do things and connect people. So it's actually a great thing. But what it did not do when they created it years ago was they did not double down on the affordable housing the plans and the implementation of it. So that's why when I came onto council, I saw that 96% of everything that was built around the Beltline was luxury, far out of reach of the average Atlantan. And I said we can't continue to allow the Beltline to exist in that way. So that's why I created the Beltline inclusionary zoning policy that requires 10 to 15% of the units to be set aside for affordability. And now I just proposed to move that down to have 30% AMI be included in that. And so what I'd like to say is not only are we talking about the Beltline being unaffordable for renters, but when you have this type of program where people are moving close to the Beltline and the home prices are increasing, that is increasing the assessed and appraised value of everything around the Beltline. And so when that occurs, we have to be able to freeze people's assessment to a value that's well below where this appraised value is going, particularly for our legacy residents and seniors. People that's lived here for 20 years are now seeing tax burdens when they didn't have a transaction of their own. So that's why I plan to have a assessed value freeze by working with the county so that we don't have individuals paying more in their mortgage, more in their taxes than they do in their mortgage. This is going to occur because we can work with the county to get that achieved, and we don't actually have to have any loss of revenue because we have the revenue that we need starting at this point. And this is also about the tax allocation district that is going to start to produce taxes that come into the city's coffers so we can continue to pay for all the things that keep the city running.
Thank you so much, President Moore.
So when the Beltline was created, I was one that pushed for, and the council did approve as a part of the Beltline, that we would have a housing trust fund because we understood, as always, when things improve, then property values improve, and that fund was to be used to help mitigate that and make sure that we are able to keep affordability. What I think the city missed the mark on was prior to establishing the Beltline, trying to acquire as much of the property as possible around it so that we didn't have people who would come in and then increase the value. So it goes back to the idea that I had, and I'm glad others like it as well, to have a legacy resident, in particular property tax of assessment freeze. An assessment is this assessment on how much your property is so that it doesn't quickly go up in value, because that assessed value times whatever we at the city, the county, and the school board decide that our taxing millage rate is going to be is what makes your property taxes go up. But here's the other thing, is Fulton County in particular has been woefully behind in assessing values of property. And we saw this back probably about 3 years ago, where we ended up having a cap because everyone's property taxes went up 200, 300% in areas across the city because they've been behind in assessing the values. They're supposed to do it annually so that it's a gradual increase and not an exponential increase. And that's what we're seeing, not only that people are increasing the value, but because now that they are starting to assess the value on a more frequent basis, people are seeing that their property is going up. So the main thing is, if we can get Fulton and the school board to agree in a legacy resident assessment freeze, that will be helpful, but we will have to do this on a state level. So it's not a matter of just agreement of the county and the school board. And the school board is 56 cents out of every dollar. It's going to be also getting it passed at the state legislature.
Thank you so much. Let's talk about other factors that are related to property taxes. Of course, that's development. Let's begin with Microsoft. Early this year it was announced that Microsoft would have a data center in the Grove Park neighborhood. What concerns do you have about this project as it relates to not just renters, but homeowners over there? And if you are elected mayor, do you need to go back and renegotiate any terms with Microsoft?
So when I'm elected mayor, I'm certainly going to be having conversations with Microsoft, because I believe that we have started a good conversation about how they can benefit the community as they are there. But I think that they can go deeper, and I believe there's more that they can do. It is going to change that part of Hollowell Parkway. I represented Grove Park area and have seen when people have come in and are starting to increase the value of the homes because they're trying to lift the neighborhood up. And that's why I go back to what I talked about earlier about neighborhood standards and making neighborhoods whole and helping them to lift themselves up. Because in the real estate market, what happens is when you allow a community or a neighborhood to go down into depression, you leave it ripe for those who will come in and swoop up properties because it's very cheap land value, and then they can create their own scenario by building new things and increasing the value of the property, and then those legacy residents who happen to be in that neighborhood get priced out. So Microsoft, while on one hand, it is certainly a great benefit to have that great corporation in our city, but there is a sacrifice, and that is to the people in and around there, because they will be bringing in people who are making higher income, who can purchase properties, and people are going to speculate on that, and people are going to increase the value of the properties as they go along.
Thank you. Councilman Dickens, Microsoft.
Yeah, your question was, what are my concerns? My concerns would be if we had a mayor that did not know technology and did not know workforce development and economic development. When you have a Microsoft coming, Airbnb coming, Google, we are being sought after. People are coming here. Companies want to be in Atlanta for a number of reasons. And so you have to be aware that having a mayor that knows technology, that has created a workforce development program, that understands economic development, and also really understands the Grove Park community and Collier Heights and Dixie Hills. This is an important time, and we can't leave it up to chance. In this very room here at the gathering spot, the president of Microsoft came and he had about 12 individuals in this room that he sought to share the idea that they wanted to come to Atlanta. Now they're not buying government land. They're coming and saying, hey, I want to be a good neighbor as we're coming as a corporate citizen to have their second largest development in the nation. I told that president right to his face, I said, it's great that you're building buildings in Atlanta, but I want to know how many Atlantans are going to be in your buildings. When you cut this ribbon with 10,000 employees that you say will be here, you cannot import 10,000 people from Seattle, San Francisco, and the West Coast with their $250,000 salaries that they can't afford to live there. When they bring those salaries here and live next to Dixie Hills residents, they will upset the ecosystem. I want you to help us train local talent to be able to get those jobs. I want you to commit to making sure that local people do that construction. I want you to commit to that the local folks will have equity in these opportunities, this thoughtware that will come out of Microsoft. The same is true with Airbnb. And so community benefits agreements looks like you will make sure that there's a grocery store here because we're in a food desert on Donnelly Hollowell. You would also make sure that local farmers and individuals that have businesses can have opportunities with this new development, and you will utilize TechBridge, Europe, and the other nonprofits that are training people to get technology jobs, that you will work with them to be able to hire at least 20 to 30% of your entry-level workforce. They agree to that. That's the type of leadership that you'll have with me that can talk to CEOs, talk to technology leaders, talk to people and say, whatever you do, it must benefit Atlanta or we don't want it. That's how I communicate to them, and guess what? They're stepping up to meet that obligation.
Thank you, Councilman Dickens. I want to stay with you for a second with another project, that is the Mall West End. If the current proposed buyer does indeed pull out, should the city then seek its own partnership and invest in this location? Because this would be the third or fourth proposed developer that's going to pull out of this project. Councilman Dickens?
The Mall West End is an important legacy project. I grew up here in Atlanta, so my malls were Greenbrier and the Mall West End. I've purchased numerous items there, and I still frequent there from time to time. But we have an opportunity here to change the game near a MARTA station, to be able to have a huge mixed income, mixed use development, and we must get this right. And I have been talking with the ownership of the Mall West End, and I've talked to the previous people that made the attempt to do this development. I think we have a great deal that's right here on the table with a large-scale, national company that could be the anchor, and then we can still have local tenants that can benefit from that. I see within the first 6 months, and hopefully, really, from what I've been having conversations about, within the first 90 days, that we'll be able to get a deal done. And yes, it may require some incentives from the city of Atlanta, and that may, and whatever incentives that it will require, they'll be consistent with what I required them to require in the beginning. If you recall, I required that the Invest Atlanta, the Fulton County Development Authority, that if they ever get any tax breaks, they have to set aside units for affordability, or they will not get those tax breaks. So that will be applied to Mall West End as well. So we're ready. I've got my Georgia State Master's in Economic Development ready and geared up to go to be able to help the Mall West End become this legacy project that residents will be able to have fresh groceries and opportunities to shop, but also opportunities to live near a MARTA station and near a great set of AUC institutions. I see big things in the future there.
Thank you, Councilman Dickens. President Moore,
Your question.
again, if this current proposed buyer does indeed pull out of purchasing the Mall West End, is this an opportunity for the city to come in and maybe partner with someone else and then invest in this property on its own?
Yes, and as I understand it, in talking to those who are intricately involved in this, that there is going to be a development that's happening, and it should move forward. Of course, if it does falter, the city does need to play a role and step up and make sure that we help and make sure something happens there. But I want to use this opportunity to talk about as well, when we're talking about malls, which have been focal points of communities. And we have not only the West End Mall area, which I am hopeful will be developed, because it seems as if there is a deal that is going to go through very soon. We also have 2 other flagship malls in our city, which are Greenbrier and Lenox Mall. And when you go to them, there's a lot of stark difference. And so while we may get Mall West End area developed, we also need to be looking to see what we can do in the Greenbrier area and working with that community to see what their vision is, because we've lost Macy's there, which is the anchor store. And it's not the mall that I used to go to. It's not the bustling, hustling place that it used to be. And then you go to Lenox, and it is bustling and hustling, but you got to go through metal detectors to get there. And so you just wonder at some point if people's safety feel compromised, if the mall will be compromised. So those are major retail centers in our city, which are very integral to the neighborhoods around them, providing the goods and services that they need, keeping that vitality, having property taxes. So I believe Mall West End is well on its way to becoming something that will be pivotal for that community and a flagship for that area. But we also need to think about some of the other areas and the other malls and how their future is in light of everything that's going on.
As it relates to the West Side, you both are well aware of the issues that came with community benefits, whether it was the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, whether it was the deal with Georgia State. But community benefits aren't legally binding sometimes. So if you are elected mayor, how can you ensure that there will be policy, actually, legislation that actually requires these developments to sign some type of community benefits that is binding? President Moore? So
I certainly believe in community benefits agreement, and was very upset that we weren't able to do it, or the council wasn't able to do it because of the rush nature with the stadium. But there are ways around it. There are some things that the city can require, and where we can require them, we need to make them a part of the agreement of whatever agreement we have with whoever's doing the development. And then those things that are outside that can be done in a memorandum of understanding. While it may not be legally binding, people appreciate more than lip service, something on paper that they can go back to and refer to and hold as a benchmark on, did you keep your promises? And I believe there are ways that we can do that. It's been done in other areas. It was done successfully in the Hills District in Philadelphia and other places where they were able to really hold themselves accountable, and those who were accountable to the benefits or agreements of things that they would do.
Councilman Dickens?
Yeah, the first community benefit agreement that we should have is by selecting a mayor that has demonstrated that they benefit the community, that's the first line of sight for them. That's the first thought that they have. And so that's the first community benefit that we should all agree to. We definitely need benefit agreements versus just plans. That was the goal. After I got onto council, after the previous council had decided on the stadium in this neighborhood, we should have had an agreement. And now we have great organizations that's picking up the slack for that. But as we go forward, we need to make sure that we have things in writing and agreements that require organizations to benefit the community, whether that's for affordable housing, whether that's to stop gentrification, job placement is critical, and construction and opportunities for contracting at these developments. Going forward, we have to make sure that as we move, this city is definitely having growth, but we want balanced growth. You know, things are coming to the north side and to certain areas of town. We have to make sure that the southwest, southeast side of town and this Vine City, English Avenue, and Donnelly Hollowell corridor has the amenities that people deserve. We want development without displacement, and it takes a steady hand to be able to do that, to always think about the community first as we do those developments. So I say you have to start with the end in mind, that the goal is to make sure that this community, this city, has residents that can continue to afford to live here, and that we develop mixed income communities from all various levels of AMI, that we all can thrive together. And so that's the best agreement that we can make first and foremost. The other types of agreements are really where we talk to the corporations and do just as I've done right now with several organizations, and my Atlanta Department of Labor that I'm going to create is going to make sure that these companies allow us to be able to train and provide apprenticeships and on-the-job training and internships for our AUC students, as well as Georgia Tech and Georgia State and Emory. So this is about making sure that you set the tone from the top with the Chamber of Commerce, ACP, all these great business organizations, saying to them that the community is paramount and first in mind in all of my activities, because we have to overcome this income inequality.
Thank you. Councilman Dickens, I know that you have to leave us, so I'll start this last question for you. But we've heard all this before, everything that you and President Moore have said, candidates before, in the previous administration, the current administration, and the previous administration before then. Should the mayor solely then be the only negotiator for these projects? If that's the issue that people have, that there's been issues with transparency, and how ethical are these rooms when people are, how ethical are these conversations in these rooms that nobody else is in? So should the mayor be the sole negotiator on these big development deals?
Well, you know what? The mayor is the chief executive of the city. But when the mayor is negotiating, when I'm negotiating, I'll have a city attorney, a CFO, right there with me to be able to bring about the solutions that we need. But I will make sure that the council is well aware of all of the negotiations and the steps that we're taking, and I'll seek their input, because as a council member, that hasn't always occurred. The council normally gets information, hours before sometimes, and only a day before in some cases, once we're ready to make the deal. And so I want to make sure that as mayor, I keep my relationship very close with council, and a lot of the current council members have already endorsed me because I keep that nature and open lines of communication. You're speaking of previous mayors, and my goal is to be like some of the legendary mayors that have actually moved this city forward and done it in the brightness of day with transparency, so people see what's going on. I'm not going to put an S on my chest. I'm going to put an us on my chest. So when I'm talking to communities, we're going to be talking about things that they share with me, what they'd like to see in these developments, so that when I negotiate, I already have the expectations of the community, which I think I'm pretty comfortable acknowledging already, because I constantly meet with the community and know what they're saying. But as the deal gets closer, this is what they should expect from us as leaders. This is important because I'm going to be looking for a cabinet that has the community in mind, but is very skilled at doing what they do best, which is make sure that they can lead an organization that's as complex as the city of Atlanta. I have the head, the heart, and the hands, and I've shown with these hands the ability to get things done. When I see a problem, I solve a problem. When we had problems with our roads and our transportation grid, I created the Atlanta Department of Transportation just 18 months ago so that we can actually improve our transit. When I saw a problem with affordable housing, I created the Beltline Inclusionary zoning and made sure that all development authorities set aside 10 to 15% of their units for affordability. When I saw a problem with minimum wage, I moved us up to $15 an hour for city employees without tax increases. So what I'm saying to you is we need to have a chief executive officer that can run the city and run it well for everyone. And that's what I like to do. And yes, I'll be the chief negotiator, but I'll have a team with me that has the community in mind.
Thank you, Councilman Dickens. Thank you so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it. We'll continue on now with President Felicia Moore negotiating these development deals. Solely the responsibility of the mayor?
Well, it is the sole responsibility of the mayor because our laws say that the mayor is the chief negotiator of the city. But what has frustrated me as a person who's come through the neighborhood as a neighborhood president, a chair of an MPU, and working as a neighborhood person is that the people who are most impacted by it are not at the table. And so what I want to do, and particularly when we have these big development deals, they're negotiated, they're thrown on the council, and most council members just go along to get along and vote on it. And the community is screaming about, you know, you need to include this, you need to do that. And at the 11th hour, some of it may get in there, most of it does not. And that creates this frustration. So what I want to do is, one, to make sure that we are communicating with people when you get to the point in the deal where you can start to expose it. Then making sure that some of the key people from the community are at the table and you're finding out from them what is it that you're going to want. I believe that is where we have missed the mark, is making sure that when we're having these conversations, that we're having it with a full set of people. So when you get to the point of legislation and you get to the point of getting the approval of council, while everyone may not agree with 100% of the things, you can get a majority to agree to move forward with others. And that's where the distrust comes in. And that's where people just think that these deals are cooked up in the back room, which actually they are, because they only come to light when they're rushed through council, which is why I've been sort of a thorn in the side to previous mayors, because I've pushed back on that rushing and not knowing the details of a deal.
Then I want to go back, on that note, I want to go back to your days when you were representing a district. Are there some votes that you regret? Can you think of some legislation that you regret voting yes or no on?
Well, and I mentioned this in a previous forum when they asked about a regrettable vote, and you know, having served 20 years as a council member, there are many votes, and there's some that you say, hey, I wish I would have done X, Y, or Z. But the one that is most recent and most pivotal was when the council was given legislation to do eminent domain in the Peoplestown neighborhood. At that time, it was not represented to the council that the parcels, just parcel numbers, related to people who actually lived in their homes. So I regret having voted on that and not knowing. But what I did, as I will do, when I find problems, I resolve them in legislation, because that's what I am, a policymaker. And so immediately, once understanding that we did that, I introduced legislation that requires now that when we are doing eminent domain in any neighborhood or anywhere in this city, that you have to let the council know in the legislation whether it's occupied, whether it's not occupied, whether people live there, so that we don't run into that situation again. So that would be one that I would say I regret.
But there are still residents in Peoplestown who are still fighting the city for their homes. If you are elected mayor, are you willing to commit and say that you will end this city's bid to take these few homes that are remaining?
So let me start with where we are right now. It's a lot of legal entanglements. They don't actually own their home anymore because the city has their
because
name
you all
on
have
their
taken them.
Exactly. And now there is a process where this administration is moving forward with the evictions. And so I immediately, upon hearing it, started calling for a halt to those evictions of them from their property. And I would hope my opponent, who is a council member, and other council members would speak up and speak loudly against that. Hopefully that does not happen before I'm sworn in as mayor, because what I want to do is get all the parties involved with the goal in mind of allowing them to stay in their home, which means we're going to have to untangle a lot of entanglements, making them whole, financially as much as we possibly can because they've expended a lot of money in legal fees. There are a lot of things that people aren't aware of or haven't really come to light that were done not correctly by the city, and I think that when you make mistakes as a city, you need to correct them. And then finding engineering that will get us a plan that will allow us to alleviate the flooding. So the goal is to allow them to stay there and alleviate the flooding with the property that they already have. And that's what I'm going to be working on immediately. I do not want this issue to go on beyond the first 100 days of my administration without a clear path forward.
I want to go back to the West Side for a moment because often when we hear about mixed-use developments and affordable housing, there's always that 15% cap that developers talk about and that the city tends to agree with, okay, that's enough. But we know that that's not enough. What can you do if you are elected mayor to maybe increase that number? Some say 30%, some say 40%, which some say that's a little bit too much, but that 15% is definitely not enough when we talk about affordability.
So in most developments, it's about 20%. And I think where the mistake comes in is we just lump affordability in one category, and we need to expand that so that we can expand the percentage. And when we expand the percentage, perhaps a certain percent of that percentage could be for those that missing middle income people who, you know, are just on the edge of paying more than 30% of their income on housing. Then we may have another section where it's workforce housing, where city employees and others who make a more modest income, and then those that are below 50% area median income, those on the lower income of the strata. I believe we need to make sure that we're being intentional about whatever percentage and increasing. I mean, we could go up to 30 or 40%. I believe a good balance will be there if we say 10% would be people 50% below area median income, 10% will be those in the middle or workforce housing, and 10% can be the missing middle or those who are making better income, so that you get an array of people. And we are trying to address all of those different issues in one development.
60% of Atlanta is zoned for single-family housing, I believe. And depending on what neighborhood you ask, some see that as being a critical component in addressing affordability. Others say it disrupts the neighborhood. Where do you stand on this? And we know there was proposed legislation to deal with this.
So when the first I heard of the proposal, and it was to eliminate single-family zoning in the city in its entirety, allow by right a property owner who owns a single-family home to be able to subdivide their property and then put an accessory dwelling unit, or ADU for short, in their backyard. So now you have a lot. So let's use my house as an example. And my house would become 2 houses. And I would allow someone to have that off, and then there's the parking requirements that are gone away. So there are a lot of issues with that. And I said, you know, one thing that I know, being a neighborhood president, being an MPU chair, that people cherish and we have fought for so many years, and that's preserving the character of our single-family neighborhoods. And we have lovely neighborhoods across the city with different character. So that's a problem. The other problem, and there are a lot of issues with it, one is the subdividing. Some of them are landlocked. The density in a single-family neighborhood, the tree cover in the neighborhood, traffic. I mean, you can go on and on, but one of the things that really concerns me is hastening or trying to rev up a sort of gentrification in some of these single-family neighborhoods, because I know the district I represent have many single-family lots that are either in disrepair, dilapidated, or vacant lots. And what you would do then is probably drive people out, because developers, they're already doing it, would swoop in, speculators, I should say, swoop in and purchase these lower price homes and then make it higher price. And then even if you did it in areas like Buckhead or others, if somebody has a $2 million home and they subdivide their property and put another dwelling back there, it's not going to necessarily be affordable. So I haven't seen the nexus of how we're going to guarantee affordability. I think that the thought is if we increase the housing stock, that will somehow drive the prices down. So what I want to do is to leave that off the table. I don't think we need to go in and just making more problems at this point in disrupting our single-family neighborhoods until we take that low-hanging fruit that I mentioned before, the city-owned properties that we have that are vacant, that we can control the dirt and we can control the price. AHA property, Land Bank Authority property. If we do those things first, then we can maybe, if a neighborhood is in agreement with it, start to look at making our single-family neighborhoods more denser.
Well, organizations like Westside Future Fund and there's Quest Homes, and you mentioned Habitat for Humanity, they are looking for properties. They want properties. They want to help put people in these properties. But as you know, sometimes the development around that the market can dictate that. That being said, when we talk about then just legislation, that means you need to work with the city council. And we know in the past, and even in the current administration, there's always been some tension between the city council and the mayor. How do you propose strengthening this relationship with a new council? And it will be a new council if you're elected mayor.
So that's an excellent question to ask me because I've been a part of that tension that has been between the executive branch and the legislative branch. First, we're going to have a lot of new council members, so they're not going to be married to the ways of the past, which is a great thing. There's a lot of power as the mayor of the city of Atlanta, and how you exercise that is really important. And I'm going to be a collaborative mayor, understanding that I don't want this council that will be working with my administration to experience the things that I experience as a council member. So I'm the best one to be the mayor because I know those inflection points, and it's just something that I'm not going to do. I don't want to, council members shouldn't have to wake up in the morning and read the newspaper to find out what's going on in City Hall. A council member should be an active, integral part of how you govern the city and what you do, and that means that they need to be informed. They need to be sought after for advice, particularly if things in their area or just what's going on in the city in general, because all of us are going to have to make decisions. And they shouldn't have to be decisions that they're making at the last minute because they should know about it. One thing that I'm going to do that I've never done in the 20 years as a council member or the 4 years that will be serving as president is to even be invited to one of the mayor's cabinet meetings where you can hear what's going on from the departments, hear what the mayor is navigating at city government. And I want to open up our cabinet meetings at least maybe biannually or quarterly so council members can sit at the table and know what's happening in city government. That's how you build relationships. And then knowing what the council people have as goals in their area, because the council people, particularly the district ones, citywide council members get a little pass because they're citywide and they don't have to focus as a council member from a district as I had because the people will come directly to you.
What was your biggest frustration as a city council member representing a district with the mayor's office?
Well, my biggest frustration was the fact that, the mayor's office wields a lot of power. And if you don't do what a mayor wants you to do, they can make getting done things that you want to have in your district very difficult.
So how would you do that? How would you be different than any other mayor if you are elected?
Well,
if city council doesn't want to do what you want them to do.
Well, I want what's done to be in the best interest of the city. And so that means I'm not going to have personal vendettas, and I'm not going to threaten you with not getting something that you want to get for your citizens in your district because they're good things. The best example I can give of that, people in my district very well know how frustrated frustrating it was to get over the hump and finally get our development of the public shopping center and food desert. You know, if you want to be, if the mayor wants to punish you, it can be difficult. I'm not into retribution. I'm not into retaliation. You know, I heard my opponent mention about how he has council members that supported him. Well, you know, when I ran for council president, a majority of the council people supported my opponent. But I'm not one to retaliate. When they came on council, they were a little nervous to see if I would get them back, but I didn't. I appointed many of them to chair committees and asked them what committee assignments they wanted and gave it to them. Why? Because it's not about personal things. It's not about trying to get someone back. It's about us moving the city forward. We don't have to like each other or we don't have to agree with each other, but if it's moving forward this city, and it's doing things in the best interest of the citizens we serve, then all of that needs to be put aside and we need to be moving forward. And while I'm going to be a strong mayor and I'm going to have my strong opinions and I'm going to ask the council to step up and do some very difficult things because we got some very difficult decisions, I'm not going to hold it against them and I'm not going to hold it against the people that they represent in their district because they're my constituents too.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there are any blighted properties in Buckhead, not many blighted properties in Midtown, Old Fourth Ward, Virginia Highlands, Ponce Highlands, but there's a lot still of blighted properties on the west side. What needs to happen with those properties, especially if we're talking about absentee owners who are not even living here in the state of Georgia? Does there need to be some changes in legislation dealing with these property owners?
Well, it's legislation, but more importantly, it's enforcement. Our code enforcement has been, I know when I was a council aide working for Gloria Tinubu back in the early 90s or mid 90s, that was the main issue in her district. When I became on council, I was chair of Community Development Committee for 4 years and we made lots of changes to our regulations on code enforcement. Then later on, when Joy Shepherd, who finally succeeded Councilmember Tinubu, she really got involved in it. Code enforcement has been the main thing that we have even allowed properties to get in a dilapidated state. So we've got to get that right, and we may have to change the model on how we make people comply with it. And where they're not complying, if they're in the Land Bank Authority or they're owned by a bank, there are a lot of banks that own these properties where they have put the family out because of foreclosure and they're just not keeping it up.
Still properties from the Great Recession of 2008.
Exactly, and from the mortgage fraud era.
APS owns a school that's been closed for almost more than 12 years now, and you know that blighted property can often invite criminal activity. So now we get into public safety. How do you see public safety and blighted property and dealing with housing affordability? All of those intersect. What concerns you the most then?
Well,
when you talk about blighted property and crime.
And that goes back to what I talked about, this neighborhood standards model and making sure that we see, you know, is the neighborhood on a decline? Is it an incline? How many blighted properties out of so many properties are there? Because if they're blighted properties, it sort of has a halo effect over the other properties that are in that area. And it does breed crime. And I know in my district, unfortunately, there were incidents where people were taken into vacant properties and victimized. And it also has a lot to do with the value of the property and the aesthetics of the property and how people feel about a particular neighborhood. And that's why on the city side, what we can do is work on the code enforcement. The other part of it is finding out who owns the property. That has been a very difficult thing, and I believe that we need to increase our research department to be able to actually move and go into finding these property owners that are outside the city. And that's going to take money because you have to actually travel to that area, find the person, and be able to serve them with notices. And that, when you get to that point, sometimes that doesn't happen. If they're owned by banks, I believe the mayor has a good platform to call those banks in and call them to task and ask them to do something about the property. And maybe even give it to the city so that we can get it in the hands of a person or a nonprofit or someone who can put it on the market and build it back up. And we have a lot of properties in our land bank authority that we have a mechanism to extinguish liens on it so that we can get them back on our property tax rolls.
I want to go back to Grove Park for a moment because I think that project and with Microsoft and obviously Mall West End, but the West Side too, when we talk about what the future of the West Side was going to, the West Side future from, when we talk about what the West Side could look like, what concerns you the most? Because there was a report from Atlanta's Urban Land Institute. After Microsoft broke that news, 95% of the homes for sale in that area went under contract. And as I look at this question from a listener, it says, is it then too late to save renters and senior homeowners from a displacement fate when you hear something like this?
So I think you hit the nail on the head. The concern is displacement and a wholesale change of who lives in Atlanta, who can afford to live in Atlanta, who can afford to stay in Atlanta. And that's why we have to put every tool that we can to help people to stay. One thing I know about the real estate market is it has a cycle. And because the prices are going up so high, I believe there will be another bust somewhere along the line. You have to ask yourself, if the median or the average price of a home is getting up in the $400,000 range, who can afford those? And what I'm finding just anecdotally is a lot of people are moving to Atlanta, but these are people who are moving to Atlanta from California and New York, where a $400,000 house is a bargain for them because they're used to higher prices. And so we're going to have to find a way to, one, welcome new people, but also try to do our best to preserve the people who are here and allow them to stay here. This is not, affordability is not just a City of Atlanta issue. I sit on the Atlanta Regional Commission. This is a regional issue. The prices are going up not only in Atlanta, but also outside of our city. And so we're pushing people further and further out to be able to find somewhere affordable that they can live, which is really not affordable because then they have to travel a long ways to get back in the core of the city.
One, speaking of traveling, let's talk about transit and mobility and how that plays a factor in all of this. Whether you were, well, let me ask you, are you in favor of light rail on the Beltline?
I am in favor of the light rail on the Beltline. I think it will be a great way for us to connect north, south, east, and west and get people moving and hopefully get them out of their cars.
And then with the new infrastructure bill that was just passed, what are your hopes for the City of Atlanta and being able to use that funding beyond fixing the roadways, because we know that needs to be done, and giving some neighborhood sidewalks, because we know that needs to be done? What else are you hopeful will come out of this? And if you are elected mayor, how do you utilize those funds?
Yes, so one, the Beltline, and see where we can get that project moving forward in a much earlier time frame that's already anticipated, looking at the Hamilton Road corridor and their desire for rail, even looking to see what we can do in terms of the Clifton corridor. But one of the things I want to make our top priority, because one thing it does come in different categories, is to look at our T-Splosh, look at our Renew Atlanta, even going back to the quality of life bonds, where we made promises to communities that we were going to do certain projects that frankly we've had to shelf because of mismanagement and no oversight or over cost, whatever. We need to put those on the front burner. I want to make sure that citizens feel that when we make promises at the city, whether I made them or whether someone else made them and didn't fulfill them, that those are promises that we can keep. So we do the first thing of trying to see all of those projects we can do, and then we start backfilling with our billions of dollars of infrastructure needs in the city.
Speaking of promises and promises made to the community, and the communities rather, Maynard Jackson started NPUs, neighborhood planning units. I've spoken to many of them. Some say they feel like they are part of the city. Some say they feel that they're not. How do you see the role of NPUs, and would that change under your administration if elected mayor?
Well, as an NPU chair back in the early 90s, I've seen the NPUs change and get away from some of the things that we used to do. And that's its neighborhood planning unit. And the thought was that you would really look at the zoning, the comprehensive development plan in your city. I've seen that we've gotten away from those charrettes and work sessions with the community to really be thoughtful about input about how you want to see your community grow. So I want to get us back to that. But also we need to look at the system overall just to make sure that we are including other people. Many MPUs are just a small set of people who know about it. I want to make sure that we're communicating with every citizen, every property owner to let them know that they have a role. And I want to get them active and involved. I believe COVID has taught us we can do a hybrid where, you know, you can have a meeting that people don't have to physically come to, but they need to be in. So it's time for us to look at a 2.0, so to speak, on how we can make our MPUs more engaged and more effective, and also make sure that we're listening.
And finally, as we wrap up, there's a population that we haven't talked about, because often people think if someone's unsheltered or homeless that it's only a certain set of circumstances, but often it's because they can't find housing, something as simple as that. Do you have a plan for addressing homelessness? And we know that each individual, or in some cases families, have a different set of optics that are leading to them being unsheltered. Where do you begin to deal with this? Where do you begin to deal with this issue?
Well, I begin with the great work that's being done by Partners in Home, Gateway, other organizations that are doing the work. You know, there's the rapid rehousing for those who are being evicted, who people don't really see because they're living in their cars. We want to get them quickly into housing. We also want to look at the spectrum from those who are chronically homeless that don't want to go into a shelter for various reasons or can't get in the shelter because it's a barriers. We may need to look back at a no-barrier shelter model as well. But these people need help. They need help for mental health issues. They need help with drug and alcohol addiction. We cannot do it alone in the city. We've got to get our partners at the state to help with funding, as well as the county that does health and human services. And finally, we've got to get the community to just say, do something about those unsheltered people and be willing and open to allow small facilities in their community without opposition.
And finally, what do you want folks in Atlanta, I'm in Atlanta, so I'll say folks, what do you want folks in Atlanta to know about your commitment if you are elected mayor? And this will be part of your wrap-up statement.
Well, my commitment is I'm a person of my word. I've served with integrity at the city. I'm day one ready to get the job done. I have been from a neighborhood level all the way up to now running to be the chief executive officer of our great city. So I understand the full breadth of working with the community, as well as what happens inside City Hall, what doesn't happen inside City Hall, and also have much experience in working with our state partners, our national partners, and other elected officials to work with us collaboratively, because it's not just about what happens at City Hall. We've got to bring partnerships in. I have the experience, the knowledge, and the know-how to make our city better, and I have the desire to do so. I just need your support, and I thank you so much to Westside Future Fund for giving me this opportunity to share and ask for the support of the citizens of the city to make our city greater.
Thank you. And that concludes today's Transform Westside Summit. Again, earlier, Councilman Andre Dickens was here. He had to leave to catch a flight, but Atlanta City Council President Felicia Moore, we thank you for continuing to stick with this conversation. I really appreciate it. The runoff election is November 30th.
Thank you so much. Thanks to both of our candidates today, City Councilman Andre Dickens, and of course, City Council President Ms. Felicia Moore. Thank you so much. And thank you to Ms. Rose Scott. And Ms. Scott, I would ask you to just hold up for a minute as Ms. Moore exits. I would like to speak to you for one moment. As a person who is, come on, Ms. Moore, we appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Am I about to be interviewed?
Shortly, yeah. And I'm gonna sit so I can be on equal level with you.
All right.
But as a person who has been doing what you've been doing for as long as you've been doing it, and in a city like Atlanta, I just want to come from my perspective to see where you are with it, as far as what your biggest concerns are. For me, again, I mentioned at the beginning of the program, you know, I'm a 4 generations in on the west side of Atlanta. So, you know, my grandmother was literally born on the street, Whitehall Street, in the ambulance, right? So we have a very solid understanding of what it means to grow up in a community of color, especially with a culture like that of Atlanta. And so I remember when the Beltline project first started being proposed back in the day, it was maybe like around 2007, 2008. The real estate market was still in an uptrend at the moment, and that was just before the crash. But my siblings and I noticed that as soon as that proposal started getting traction, you started seeing more, you know, the stereotype in our neighborhood is once you see white ladies comfortable with pushing their babies down the street in a stroller or taking a jog, you know what time it is, right? And so we saw back then the beginning of what has been now this long arc of finally getting to this point where we see it's actually that time. And people are scared, to be honest, because what that usually translates to in communities of color is we get pushed out, we get priced out. And the people who have made these communities, you know, what they are, who have contributed so much to the cultures of these communities to make them attractive in the first place, are now being completely shut out of the economic opportunity that's now taking place. So with that being a sort of background and understanding the type of work that you do, what do you see as the biggest issue for Atlanta right now as far as creating an actual city that is equitable for all residents?
You know, I think about so many candidates always refer to Maynard Jackson, Atlanta's first black mayor, and his vision. And I think that commitment has to be there. I can't tell folks who to vote for, but I would know that for any citizen, any resident, that they want folks to keep their word. And so commitment and accountability are key. That's why democracy is so important, right? Yeah. So I always tell folks, you know, you need to exercise your right to vote. You need to exercise your right to speak and hold folks accountable. There are a lot of issues in Atlanta, but, you know, we always hear Atlanta's identity. And I still think Atlanta's trying to find that identity. Yeah. Whatever happens November 30th will be a crucial and pivotal point in this city's history. And I think that will start defining what Atlanta's true identity will be. We know about the civil rights movement. Right. We know about the Olympics. But in terms of the people, because people make identity. People will make up the city's identity. And if the identity is lopsided or, you know, there's a huge disparity, then what will that say about this city, you know, 10, 15 years, maybe 5 years from now? So I think the issue is about elected officials keeping their word, being committed, and then accountability and all the processes that are tied to that.
So follow-up and final question for you. With that being, you know, sort of identifying where the issues are, what do you see the biggest potential for Atlanta being? You know, going not just beyond this election, but I mean in the next decade, 20 years or so.
Well, I think the potential means that this was a city during this time that really put forth, whether it was policy, public-private partnerships, all of these tentacles tied together to move Atlanta to this great mecca that it's supposed to be. You know, this welcoming city, the city that's too busy to hate or whatever it's called. That will be the legacy of what happens in this election, I think. I think it's going to be crucial. But it goes back to commitment, and not just from elected officials, but public-private partnerships. I'm not a mouthpiece for Westside Future Fund or Quest Homes or any other organization or PAD, but there are a lot of organizations that do great work in this city. And especially, I've become aware of a lot of organizations during the pandemic. So the will is here. Yeah. It sounds like a cliche. The will is here in Atlanta. The question is, will the way and the execution, will that happen?
Yeah. Well, we're certain to find out.
And you know, you're the future, you know. Fourth generation, that's great. I'm sure you want your generation after you to be able to stay in the same communities that you talked about your grandmother,
Absolutely.
right? That's a wonderful, that's a wonderful legacy in its own.
Absolutely. And I'm gonna tell you, we told my grandmama, you will not sell this house.
That's right.
You absolutely will not sell this.
Tell her to hang up the phone.
Yeah, don't even, no thank you. Y'all keep moving and go on to the next neighborhood. Well, Ms. Rose Scott, thank you so much
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
coming today and sharing with us. We appreciate you.
Appreciate it.
Continue doing the fabulous work that you're doing.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. And now we're going to bring back up President and CEO, Mr. John Ahmann. Oh, she hanging here. There we go. Mr. John Ahmann, President and CEO of Westside Future Fund.
Thanks, Rose. And yeah, that was a great interview conducted by Rose. So thank you so much. And what I really appreciate about both the candidates and also obviously Rose Scott is such a deep knowledge and awareness, of the issues that are affecting the West Side. Mm-hmm. And so clearly, the candidates being so grounded in the challenges and their potential solutions, but clearly they both are very experienced and thought a lot about it and have some great ideas. Whoever's next as our mayor.
Yeah, and it will be one of the two. And we appreciate, again, Ms. Felicia Moore, City Council President, for coming out and spending extra time with us this morning. And again, Councilman Andre Dickens, thank you so much for the time that you could allot to us. And John, I know you want to get to talking about some more about what Westside Future Fund has to offer to residents of the historic Westside.
Yeah, and in our last few minutes, we're going to wind up in about 5-6 minutes or so. But one thing we wanted to talk about, and we really appreciate the support we've had from the public and private sector for our Home on the West Side program, and to really frame this, because you heard the candidates talking about displacement, you mentioned it as well, is the historic West Side neighborhoods that we're focused back in 1960 had 50,000 residents. It was overwhelmingly black for the wrong reasons because of segregation, and through time and barriers coming down, the neighborhoods have depopulated. Housing prices fell, but most of the folks that remain are working, but often of the lower wage or retired and fixed income. So one of the things I really learned, I didn't really know until I started my work at Home on the West Side Future Fund, is when you talk about affordable housing, there's some really critical parts to it. It's complex. One on the affordable housing is affordable to whom? Where the candidates talk about, you hear this term, area median income, AMI, because not everyone makes the same salary, obviously, right? So affordable to whom? So clearly, that's a key part of affordable housing, is affordable to whom and at what wage. The next part is, where is it? Yeah. Where is that affordable housing that's affordable to whom? Because clearly folks want to be in housing that's in a thriving neighborhood, and very, very critically, heard both candidates talk about this, near job centers. Because another barrier often if you can't afford a home is, okay, your transportation costs. So the closer you are to a thriving job center, the better. And the third, kind of to speak to your family history, is like, okay, what about the folks that have been there? What kind of access do they have to the housing? And so when we developed Home on the West Side with a huge amount of input from the community, was to speak to those concerns. So our Home on the West Side program, tries to address all those elements, because as the West Side is repopulating, ensuring people, from the community can benefit. So I think we want to show you one other slide on our Home on the West Side. One of the things we're really proud of, and our board adopted, is community retention criteria. So some of the issues that you raised, right, is ensuring that when we bring online affordable housing, that those who live in the community, those who graduate from the schools in the community, those who work in the community, are prioritized, through Home on the West Side. And so that's a really important part of our program. The other is hitting the ranges of affordability. So one part of it is for the legacy homeowners, for them to remain in their home. That's our Anti-Displacement Tax Fund. So if you're a legacy homeowner and qualify for the program, your future tax appreciation is paid for, thanks to philanthropy we've raised, and both candidates spoke to that and some other ideas to help folks, which was terrific. And our rental housing and our home ownership. So we're trying to hit all the different challenges people face from a housing perspective. So we'll go show you slides. So our Anti-Displacement Tax Fund, we now have about 133 people qualified. We actually just paid the tax bill, for all these homeowners. And we hope that more will continue to sign up. We think there are more people out there that are eligible. We want to sign up. So our next slide, really talks about, our progress to date. And so we've raised philanthropy, and we also have 10 Atlanta corporations that have backed an impact fund, where these corporations basically loan us money off their balance sheet. They want a return of their cash, but not to make money on it. So it's enormously amplifies the impact of the philanthropy we raised, as well as the public funds we received. So we can see we've acquired about 426 units You know, in the single family and the 308, and a lot of that property before we bought it was blighted. And I appreciate the candidate speaking to blight, because when we buy a single family, we're not like any other investor. We lock it down, and we have a crew actually from the west side that regularly mows it, maintains it, until we can develop that piece of property. So we want to reduce blight as we bring housing online. We've invested about $60 million in the units acquired that you see, and the units that we're bringing into service. And you can also see we're very focused, because most of the folks who lived on the west side, back to affordable to whom, most of the residents who are living on the west side were below area median income of 60%. So we're very focused on delivering housing to that income. And also, and there are a lot of great partners on the west side where we have funds we can also help support them, from Quest to Atlanta Housing to Oaks ATL and others as well. And our next slide. So this was something we bought in English Avenue with philanthropy we had raised, and now it looks like this. This is now 31 units, you know, high quality, affordable housing. Of the 31 units, only one person can pay, quote, the market rate without any subsidy. So the rest of those units are subsidized. We're very grateful to our partnership with Atlanta Housing, led by Eugene Jones, that helps us, you know, provide subsidy to residents to live in this housing. Next slide. Another really important part is home ownership, and as land prices are going up, both candidates spoke to that. In order for people who qualify for a mortgage, they may qualify for a mortgage for 150, 160, but given the escalation of land prices on the west side, that won't put them in a single-family home without some help. So there's the city's down payment assistance program, Atlanta Housing, and others, but we also layer philanthropy on top of that to put people in the home. And this is a home I think now owned by, and this is a most recent homeowner, Kevin Locke, who's actually a teacher in Fulton County and qualified for down payment assistance from us in the city that put him into this home. We're grateful, I think, for Atlanta Habitat actually built us this home, and it's very cost effective. So I think, yeah, and then the other thing we want to also mention is about creating wealth. And one of the things I hear constantly and people want to see more of is ensuring that, you know, virtuous community people that live in the community who have business ideas can grow those businesses and often then give back to the community and recycle that money in the community. But we've launched a program-related investment to provide loans to West Side businesses. The same way we focus our housing program for folks from the West Side, this is the same kind of focus. So it's called program-related investments. You know, we've piloted that, and now we're looking to expand it thanks to support from PNC Bank, AT&T, and Truist. We're able to do this. The deadline actually was today to go on, but even if you just learned about it now and go to our website and see it, please go ahead and register, because we'll have another round of this in a couple of months for, you know, on this program. And so just wanted to share with you a little bit more about, you know, the work we're doing. We're so grateful, because what's absolutely necessary, and I appreciate both candidates speaking to this, is public-private partnership. There's a lot to do, and the way we can really help each other is by amplifying each other's impact and also focusing on what we can do well. No one can do it. Things are moving too fast, too much to do, so we need, you know, lots of great partnerships to make this happen. So thanks to both the candidates for speaking to these types of issues this morning. So yeah, I think we want to wrap up now. People are probably like, okay, right. What next?
Right. Well, just to tie it all together, I mean, you know, affordable housing is more than just affordable housing. Affordable housing is also money in your pocket to now invest in healthcare, right, to invest in better education.
And quality affordable housing.
Quality affordable housing, right, where you can feel safe, you can take pride in the fact that, you know, affordable doesn't just mean run down, because right, I think as a community, we've drunk that Kool-Aid for far too long, where we feel as if, right, oh, okay, something that is affordable for lower income people, I should be willing to accept a property that is run down in an unsafe environment, right, and that's not the case. And we appreciate the work of Westside Future Fund and its partners in helping
and other people like Quest and other people out there doing it too on the West Side, absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, now we're going to get to our gift card giveaway.
All right, this is what people really want to get to.
This is what people
like,
really want.
Get through that housing stuff. Get to the gift.
Right, what you giving me today. All right. Well, Home Depot has been, you know, consistent and very vital partner of Westside Future Fund and the revitalization.
Big investor in our housing efforts, the Home Depot Foundation, Home Depot Corporation.
Right, millions of dollars. And, you know, they have their own outreach to the community where they have, you know, the backyard, and they have all of these other efforts and whatnot to invest in the community. Today they're giving away a gift card, as they do at each summit, and the winner of that gift card is Miss Brenda Davenport. Congratulations,
all right.
Brenda Davenport.
Congratulations, Brenda.
All right, and the next gift card we have is from Goodwill of North Georgia, who we know just opened up a new center on Metropolitan Parkway. It's going to be, you know, helping thousands of people be employed, you know, in per year.
Right.
And so they are doing excellent work to not just contribute to the west side of Atlanta, but all of Greater Atlanta.
And we really appreciate it. I remember when I started my work, they were really on the hunt to find a location to do their job training on this part of the west side. They did it, and it's great to see it coming online.
Yes, and the winner of that gift card is Ms. Jennifer Hallman. Thank you, Ms. Jennifer Hallman, for tuning in. We appreciate you guys, and congratulations on your gift card wins.
Right.
Maybe we'll win a gift card one of these.
If they call one of our names, people are gonna be like, "It is fixed." I don't think we get to win, man.
Nah, it's cool, man. Look, this is plenty.
But now, you know, I know what to get you for Christmas. You just gave it away.
Don't give me no gift card. Well, thank you, folks. We appreciate you tuning in. Again, we are, you know, on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Definitely stay engaged with us. Share this information. Share the posts. Share, you know, everything that you found valuable in today's program and any program that we have at the Transform Westside Summit. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to us. DM us, send us a message, send us an email. We are happy to hear from you. Or if you really want to feel fancy in 2021 about it or 2022 about it, just go ahead and upload a story to IG, you know, or to Facebook or to Twitter and tag us in it, add us in it, and we'll be happy to engage with you that way. But definitely stay down with us. We appreciate you tuning in, and we're looking forward to continuing to serve.
Have a great Thanksgiving. We'll be back on our next summit for Friday, December 3rd. And we're confirming that program right now, but we'll be sharing about it soon. So I hope to see people come back. And again, thank you to our Mr. Dickens and Ms. Moore and Rose Scott for our program this morning.
Excellent conversation. We appreciate you all. Until next time, stay safe.